There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the mirror no longer flatters. It reflects not who you dream to be, but who you are, fractured, weary, broken from battles you've lost against yourself. The promises you made and abandoned, the courage you betrayed, the talents you buried, the countless mornings you rose, only to fall again into despair by nightfall. In such a moment, the temptation is great to recoil from the reflection, to turn away and build a mask, a distraction, a lie. But healing begins not in denial, but in confrontation. Look closer. Beneath your shattered reflection is not failure, but potential, unclaimed, not weakness, but power, unintegrated. You are not the sum of your failures. You are the one who watches the failure. And if you can observe it, you are not it. You are something more. The self-confidence you seek is not a costume you put on. It is a fire you kindle within. It grows when you accept your inner contradictions, when you walk into your own darkness and name the monsters hiding there, not to destroy them, but to understand them, to reclaim the energy they stole. You failed yourself, then good. You now know what you are capable of not doing. Let that be the border, not the prison. You are the architect now. Rebuild, not as the innocent, but as the initiated. Not as the naive, but as the one who has fallen and stood again, not by magic, but by meaning. Your task now is not to erase the past, but to forge from it a sword. Confidence is not certainty. It is the will to act, despite uncertainty. It is the quiet force of a soul who has met the shadow and still chooses to walk toward the light. Rise not as who you once were, but as who you were always meant to become. Face the shadow, don't flee, for there is a part of you that you hide, not just from the world, but from yourself. You tuck it behind smiles, achievements, distractions, and routines. It's the voice that whispers at night, the emotion that flares when you're triggered, the part of you that remembers what you've tried to forget. That is your shadow, and until you turn toward it, it will rule you from the dark. The shadow is not evil. It is not your enemy. It is made of everything you've rejected, disowned, or feared within yourself. Anger you weren't allowed to feel, desires you were taught to shame, fear you were too proud to admit, failures you tried to erase. The shadow is the self you exiled to survive, to belong, to be accepted. But what you banish does not disappear. It waits. It acts through your habits, your reactions, your compulsions. You sabotage your progress and don't know why. You lash out or withdraw and call it just how I am. You chase validation or avoid confrontation, all while wondering why you feel hollow. These patterns are not accidents. They are symptoms of a self divided. To face the shadow is to call yourself back together. You must look where it hurts. You must feel what you've numbed. You must ask the questions you've avoided. What am I hiding? What am I afraid they'll see? What parts of me have I abandoned in the name of being good, successful, or strong? This work is not pleasant. It is not instant. It does not look like a motivational quote or a quick fix. It looks like sitting with your shame until it speaks the truth beneath it. It looks like meeting your jealousy and asking what it's trying to protect. It looks like owning your rage and seeing the wound it's guarding. It looks like breaking the cycle of blame and saying, "This is mine. I choose to deal with it now." And when you do, something shifts. The fear loses its grip. The habits lose their power. You stop running from yourself and begin to walk with yourself, not as a polished, perfect version, but as a whole, honest one. There is more energy in your shadow than you know. There is creativity in your chaos, strength in your sadness, power in your pain. What you face, you transform. What you integrate becomes fuel. You do not become less human by doing this work. You become more grounded, more self-aware, more capable of choosing rather than reacting. You begin to trust yourself because you're no longer hiding from who you are. Real freedom isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of self. All of it, light and dark, high and low, public and private. When you stop fleeing from the shadow, you begin the return to wholeness. And that is the foundation of true self-confidence, not performance, not perfection, integration. A deep knowing that even in your worst moments, you will not abandon yourself. You will face what comes. You will not flinch from your truth, not because you've learned. The shadow isn't here to destroy you. You are not your past. You are its observer. The past is a teacher, not a prison. Yet how easily we confuse the lessons we've lived with the labels we carry. You remember what went wrong, the decisions you regret, the people you hurt or who hurt you, the dreams you abandoned. These memories shape you, but they do not define you unless you let them. Too often, you wear them like a name tag. Failure, broken, not enough. But none of those are your truth. They are experiences, you are not what happened. You are the one who saw it happen. The one who still stands here, breathing, watching, learning. Your memories are not your essence. They are part of the past. Yes, they are the fingerprints of time. But the self that can remember them is also the self that can choose differently now. You are the witness, the one who noticed how it felt to fall, how it felt to be lost, how it felt to be stuck in cycles. That witness is your power. It's the part of you that has always remained untouched by chaos. The part that knew, even in your darkest hour, that something more was possible. To observe the past is not to ignore it. It is to stop drowning in it. When you identify too closely with who you were, you chain yourself to an outdated version of your story. You might say, I always sabotage things, or I'm not the kind of person who can succeed, or I'm too damaged to be loved. But those are not truths. They are conclusions made by a self who hadn't yet seen the whole picture. A self who was doing the best they could with the awareness they had. The real shift comes when you can look at those moments with compassion rather than condemnation. When you stop saying, this is who I am, and start saying, this is what you begin to ask better questions. What was I trying to protect when I made that choice? What was I afraid of? What belief was driving that pattern? Awareness opens space between you and the pain, and in that space, healing begins. Every time you become the observer, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer driven by blind reaction. You are responding with intention. You are no longer ruled by shame. You are learning to forgive, and you are no longer stuck in who you were. You are becoming who you are. The past can no longer dominate your present, because you've stopped identifying with it. You've remembered that you are the one who sees, not just the one who feels. You are not here to repeat your history. You are here to transform it. That doesn't mean erasing it. It means transmuting it into wisdom, depth, strength. The broken pieces become the gold in the mosaic of your soul. The observer in you is not detached. It is deeply engaged, but not enslaved. It sees with clarity and chooses with courage. You don't need to run from who you were. You need only to stop believing that's all you can ever be. The fact that you can observe means you've already evolved. You are not frozen in time. You are not condemned by memory. You are the one who watches and the one who glows. Failure marks the boundary of the known self. It arrives like a rupture, a sharp, undeniable moment where your beliefs about who you are, what you're capable of, and how the world works are suddenly no longer enough. You planned, hoped, tried. You poured yourself into something, and it collapsed. And when it did, so did a piece of your identity, the self you had known, the version of you that could succeed under certain conditions. could not go further. It met its limit, and in that moment, a crack appears. Through it, something deeper begins to stir. Failure is often seen as an end, but it is not. It is a revelation. It shows you where your current tools, beliefs, and understanding of yourself can no longer carry you. It is not a judgment. It is a threshold. The collapse is not punishment. It is invitation. An invitation to step beyond what is familiar, to let go of the ego's illusion of control, and to discover the aspects of yourself that have been dormant or denied. Before failure, you operate within a known range, within strategies that work, masks that fit, roles that are accepted. But that self is limited. It may be functional, even successful, but it is incomplete, and the soul is not content with fragments. It calls you toward wholeness, and failure is often its method of awakening. Not to destroy you, but to expose the places where truth was missing, where your growth had stalled, where your identity was too small for your becoming. It's easy to want to retreat when failure comes, to regress, to numb, to distract, to cling to what used to work. But that old self, the one shaped by survival, performance, or fear, cannot lead you forward. What's required now is surrender, a deep letting go of who you thought you were, and a courageous stepping into the unknown. The unknown self lives beyond the edge of failure. It is formed not by comfort, but by presence, not by repetition, but by discovery. To meet this new self, you must be willing to feel everything failure brings: the disappointment, the shame, the grief, the silence. These are not enemies, they are signals. They mark the borderlands of transformation. Sit with them, and they will not destroy you. They will show you the truths that were waiting beneath your certainty. You will find pieces of yourself in the rubble, resilience you didn't know you had, wisdom born from loss, clarity that only pain can provide. Failure humbles the ego. It softens the rigid parts of your identity. It teaches you that strength is not the absence of falling, but the willingness to rise with more awareness. You learn what truly matters. Not what the world told you to chase, but what your soul longs to express. You start to see the gap between what you thought you wanted and what you truly need, and in that space, the real work begins. The self that emerges after failure is not a return to who you were, it is a rebirth. You come back with fewer illusions, deeper roots, and a clearer voice. You stop performing for approval. You start aligning with authenticity. You stop striving to be seen and begin learning to truly see yourself. So let failure do its sacred work. Let it strip away what no longer serves. Let it lead you to the boundary of the known self, and then let it push you beyond. The next version of you is waiting there, not polished, but real, not certain, but awake. And it is through failure that you will meet them. True confidence emerges through inner integration. True confidence is not the loud, untouchable energy that demands attention or approval. It is not built on external success, titles, or image. It does not need to dominate, convince, or perform. True confidence is quiet, grounded, and often invisible to those who look only at the surface. It arises not from perfection, but from integration, from the deep inner process of bringing together all that we are: the light, the shadow, the wounds, the wisdom. It begins when you stop compartmentalizing yourself, when you no longer hide the parts of you that feel unworthy, broken, or afraid. When you stop exiling your shame, your anger, your vulnerability, and instead begin to sit with them, listen to them, and understand their language. Confidence does not grow from suppression, it grows from inclusion. The more of yourself you are willing to embrace, the more unshakable your presence becomes. We are taught to believe that confidence comes from proving ourselves, but anything built on proof is fragile. If it depends on outcomes, it shatters when you fail. If it depends on praise, it crumbles when you're criticized. If it depends on being seen a certain way, it collapses when someone sees through it. But the confidence that comes from integration cannot be taken away, because it is not rooted in who you appear to be, but in who you know yourself to be, even when no one is watching. Integration means acknowledging your contradictions and holding them with compassion. You can be strong and still feel afraid. You can be wise and still make mistakes. You can carry darkness and still be full of light. When you stop needing to be only one thing, only successful, only kind, only confident, you create space to be whole, and in wholeness, you find a confidence that does not waver when the world shifts, because it is not built on illusion. Confidence emerges when your inner world is no longer at war with itself, when your inner critic softens, not because you've silenced it, but because you've listened to it and discovered the fear beneath its voice. When the child in you who felt abandoned no longer drives your adult decisions because you've taken the time to nurture and reparent them. When the mask you've worn to be accepted finally slips off, and you realize you were more lovable without. This inner harmony cannot be forced. It requires presence, patience, and deep honesty. You must be willing to see what you've avoided, to grieve what you've lost, and to forgive what you once condemned. Integration is not a straight line, it is a spiral. You will revisit old wounds with new eyes. You will fall back into patterns and rise again, each time with more awareness. But with each return to yourself, your inner structure becomes stronger. True confidence is the result of this process. It's not the denial of fear, but the capacity to move through it with self-trust. It's not the absence of doubt, but the refusal to be paralyzed by it. It's the quiet knowing that you belong, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. You cannot fake this kind of confidence, but you don't need to chase it either. It emerges naturally, like a tree that grows deeper roots each season. As you integrate, you will feel it settle in your bones, a sense of peace, of presence, of inner alignment. And when it does, you will no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. You will have already remembered it yourself. Rebuild not from illusion but from meaning. When everything falls apart, when your plans collapse, your self-image fractures, and the life you once believed in no longer holds, you are left with rubble. And in that rubble lies a choice: rebuild from illusion or rebuild from meaning. Illusion offers quick relief. It tells you to move on, to bounce back, to regain control as fast as possible. It tempts you to recreate what looked successful from the outside, to seek validation, to chase symbols of stability, money, attention, status, certainty. But if you rebuild from illusion, you only restore the structure that failed you in the first place. You lay new bricks over the same cracks. You polish the surface while the foundation remains hollow. It may look fine for a while. You may even convince yourself that you've recovered, but deep down you know something is missing. That something is meaning. Meaning does not rush. It asks you to slow down, to sit in the ashes, and feel what burned. It invites you to sift through what remains, not for what is still useful, but for what is still true, what actually mattered. What did you chase that was never really yours? What did you lose that revealed what cannot be lost? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones, because rebuilding from meaning requires truth, raw, sometimes painful, but always liberating truth. When the illusions fall away, what is left is your essence, the core of you that is not defined by success, roles, or performance. The part that existed before you were taught to strive, to please, to pretend. Rebuilding from this place is slower, deeper, and more demanding. But what you create from here will endure, because it will be rooted in who you actually are, not who you thought you had to be. Meaning is born in presence. You can't find it by rushing ahead or clinging to the past. It lives in the space between destruction and creation, in the quiet, the reflection, the listening. And you must be brave to dwell there, to resist the impulse to escape. But if you stay, meaning will emerge, perhaps not as answers, but as direction, perhaps not in clarity, but in resonance. Something inside you will say, this is the path, not because it guarantees success, but because it feels aligned, real, worthy. To rebuild from meaning is to create a life that reflects your soul, not your survival mechanisms. It means choosing integrity over image, depth over distraction, intention over habit. It means no longer living according to the story others wrote for you, or the one you wrote in fear. Instead, you begin to live a story that is true, maybe quieter, maybe less glamorous, but more whole. You will still face doubt, you will still fall at times, but each time you return to your center, you'll find it stronger than before, because you are not building a castle in the air. You are building something rooted in self-awareness, in courage, in values that cannot be shaken by external chaos. This is the work of real transformation, not decorating the ruins, but letting the old self die so a more authentic self can emerge. And when it does, you will recognize the difference, not just in what you build, but in how it feels to live inside it. There will be a peace, a quiet confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is honest. We build not from illusion, but from meaning. It takes longer, it asks more of you, but in the end, it gives you back your life. Not as it was, but as it was always meant to be. Choose the path of the initiated, not the innocent. The innocent begins with hope, untouched by pain, eager to chase ideals and dreams. They believe that life is fair, that effort always yields reward, that love is easy, and that failure is an exception rather than a teacher. There is beauty in this innocence, a purity of spirit, a boldness unburdened by scars. But innocence cannot carry you through the fire. When the illusions fall away, when betrayal cuts deep, when life breaks your heart without explanation, innocence shatters. It is not designed to withstand the depths. This is where the initiated is born. The initiated has suffered, not because they were weak or wrong, but because they have lived. They have fallen in ways that forced them to confront the shadow, their own and the world's. They have touched despair, tasted the loneliness that follows disillusionment, and stood on the edge of their own undoing. And yet they did not turn away. They stayed. They listened. They let the pain carve its message into their soul. To be initiated is not to be made special. It is to be made real. It is to walk through the death of who you thought you were, and emerge not as a perfected self, but as an integrated one. You carry your wounds, yes, but no longer as excuses or disguises. You carry them as symbols of passage, as reminders that you have met the underworld and chosen to rise anyway. The path of the innocent seeks comfort and certainty. It wants guarantees. It clings to ideals. It resists change. But the path of the initiated embraces the unknown. It surrenders to the truth that life is not not something to conquer, but something to participate in. Fully, honestly, without masks. When you choose the path of the initiated, you stop asking, how do I avoid pain? And begin asking, what does this pain have to teach me? You stop running from your failures and start seeing them as thresholds, gates that lead deeper into the self you've yet to meet. You stop needing to be seen a certain way and start craving authenticity above all. The initiated does not boast. They do not need to impress. Their strength is quiet because it has been earned. They speak from experience, not theory. Their wisdom is not rehearsed. It is lived. They do not avoid fear. They move with it. They do not reject their past. They include it. And because of this, they hold a presence that cannot be faked. You cannot become initiated through shortcuts. It requires descent. You must be willing to lose what is false, to question everything you were told, to sit in the dark without forcing the light. And when the light returns, it will be yours, not borrowed, not manufactured, but born from your own soul's fire. This path asks more of you. It will not flatter your ego. It will not reward your performance, but it will transform you, not into someone else, but into who you truly are, beneath the layers of conditioning, defense and expectation. So choose the harder path, the one that humbles you, that breaks your heart open, that demands your full presence. Choose the path that doesn't promise ease, but promises meaning. The path that doesn't keep you safe, but keeps you awake. You do not need to stay innocent to stay whole. Wholeness comes from integration, not protection. The world does not need more people who pretend it's all okay. It needs people who have walked through fire and returned with truth in their eyes. Choose the path of the initiated. It is not the easier way, but it is the way home.